For those of you who don't know, Android 18's real name is actually Lazuli, while 17's real name is Lapis, as confirmed by Toriyama himself, as they're named after the Lapis Lazuli gemstone. And it may shock you to hear this, but if Lazuli rejected Krillin, it would actually have a monumental impact on the history of Dragon Ball. But because Z, Super, and even GT all have different continuities at this point, we will analyze each separately. Starting off with Z, we know that after the Cell games, Krillin made a wish to remove the bombs of Lapis and Lazuli. Lazuli originally gave the impression that she had no interest in Krillin, but at the end of the day, she said see you later, hinting that she was interested. She then flies off, only to be seen later on in the Buu Saga living with Krillin on Roshi's Island. This is the point where we will make a change where Lazuli never says see you later, as she never had any interest in Krillin at all. Now, to be specific, the first and obvious change that would occur is that Marin wouldn't be born, which is hilarious since that name is only a slight alteration of Krillin's anime-only ex. Now, some of you may think that because Krillin and Lazuli would not get together, that would in fact mean that he would get together with his ex Marin, but that doesn't make sense because Krillin made it pretty clear that he was over her if we're looking at it in the anime-only scenes, and she's also a filler character, so it wouldn't be realistic to the original story. And realistically, there's no real difference between Krillin being single and marrying a normal Earth woman with no powers, so for all sakes and purposes, let's go with Krillin becoming Mr. Lonely. So the question is whether or not Krillin would participate in the World Tournament. Keep in mind that originally it was Lazuli that pushed him into going. She was the one that asked about all of the prizes besides first place, because she knew that even if she didn't win, she could still get something out of it. Now remember, Krillin was originally against going in the first place due to all of the strong fighters that were there, so all of this suggests that Krillin would most likely not participate if Lazuli were not in his life. But there is a counter argument because some of you could argue that because he isn't married with a kid, he could still dedicate his entire life to training more, and that would mean that he would have more free time to get himself stronger. And considering the fact that Lazuli probably would not have participated had she not been in direct contact with our heroes, that is one less fighter that could take home the prize money, increasing Krillin's probability of winning. And considering the fact that Krillin would still likely be living with Master Roshi and have financial issues, it seems like the counter argument is actually stronger, and Krillin would participate even without Lazuli's influence. So this portion of the what if basically transforms into what if Lazuli never participated in the World Tournament at all. Let's first fast forward and simulate a bunch of major events up until the point where Gohan gets his energy absorbed. Ultimately, Krillin participating wouldn't change the plot much since he would still eventually leave with everyone to go help stop Babidi from allowing Buu to hatch. This now means that he would eventually be turned into stone, which ultimately rendered him useless in this part of the story anyways. But what does this have to do with the tournament? Well, with no Lazuli, that means Goten and Trunks would still disguise themselves as the Mighty Mask. But because Lazuli isn't there to defeat them, they could easily wipe out the other jobbers in the tournament in Killa and Jewel. This now leaves Mr. Satan in serious trouble here, because he can't bribe Goten and Trunks, who clearly want to fight for bragging rights, and obviously you can't really brag a character that's trying to act like they're another character. And since Goten has no say in this fight and Trunks calls all the shots because Goten has no personality, you can't really bribe the richest kid in the world. So Mr. Satan's entire reputation would take a hit by losing to the Mighty Mask. Now, it's possible that Goten and Trunks would still be so clumsy that people would find out who they were, so even if Mr. Satan won on technicality, he would still lose reputation points, which ultimately makes a serious impact down the road. Now, as we keep this thought in the back of our mind the entire time, we will now fast forward through a lot of similar events that wouldn't change up until we get to the point where Mr. Satan was originally called on to stop Majin Buu. Because humanity would have lost faith in him, they wouldn't view him as their hero in their own right. This now means that if Mr. Satan never befriends Buu, then Buu never becomes good. This means that there is never a split between evil Buu and what we would call good Buu, meaning Super Buu would never exist. Keep in mind that Mr. Satan was also an integral character in helping Buu befriend B the dog. Without Mr. Satan, none of these things would change simply because of his drop in reputation and him never confronting Buu directly. So what all happens because of this? Well, in all likelihood, one of two things is guaranteed to happen. Gotenks would eventually train up to a certain point and defeat Buu directly if he's not playing around enough, or in all likelihood, considering the fact that Gotenks would always find some way to screw it up, Gohan would eventually come back to Earth and kill Fat Buu himself. Of course, this assumes that Goku doesn't just decide to fully power up into a Super Saiyan 3 and kill Fat Buu by himself the way that he should have in the first place. So all of this means that we should have good news. But there is an interesting alternative. If all of the major original events took place where Super Buu still somehow happened, which ultimately led to Kid Buu, we would have a situation where Goku and Vegeta ended up on the planet of the Kais fighting against Kid Buu the same way they originally did. Assuming Goku's family and friends still died in place of Mr. Satan when Earth blew up, that means that when Earth was revived and all of the civilians were trying to give energy, the civilians would not donate energy as willingly since they lost respect for Mr. Satan, especially since this was before a wish was made to erase their memories of Majin Buu, so they would remember that he lost to the Mighty Mask. And this means that Kid Buu could still kill Goku and Vegeta on the planet of the Kais. Now, as far as Gotenks and Gohan are concerned, Kid Buu would be willing to blow himself up just to kill them, and that's really the biggest threat of all, because it doesn't matter even if they're stronger than Kid Buu, he's so dangerous and unpredictable that he could just teleport near Earth and just blow it up for absolutely no reason. But out of these two outcomes, the positive one is more likely. But there's a problem with the positive outcome. The problem is that if Gotenks or Gohan kills Fat Buu, then that means Goku and Vegeta in all likelihood would stay dead, since the Elder Kai wouldn't have a reason to give his life up for Goku, and as far as Vegeta's concerned, he originally got a second chance at life because Buu was still causing issues, so he got a one-day pass. So if Buu was killed, then Vegeta would stay dead, and in the long run, without Goku or Vegeta, Earth is in trouble. And all of this makes us ask, well, what would happen in Dragon Ball Super? Well, let's now declare that we won't analyze Super continuously from Dragon Ball Z simply because of the fact that it's too obvious how things would go with no Goku and no Vegeta. So what would happen if our heroes somehow got rid of Buu and arrived in Super the same exact way that they originally did, minus Krillin being with Lazuli? Well, we have to remember that in Dragon Ball Super Chapter 31, we see that Super inserted a flashback scene with Lapis. After Cell died, Lazuli told Lapis that she wanted to live her life freely with Goku dead and the bomb removed. Long story short, if Lazuli is never with Krillin and we strictly use Super's continuity, in a long roundabout way, this ultimately means that neither of them would participate in the Tournament of Power, because Krillin was a direct link to Lazuli, and Lazuli was still loosely connected to Lapis. This ultimately means that if everything goes the same exact way, then Goku would have to recruit weaker participants in the Tournament of Power since it would be much harder to get into immediate contact with the androids. And considering the fact that the Tournament of Power was so close to being lost, and considering the fact that Goku doesn't have a lot of time to recruit these fighters, Earth would lose. But if Universe 11 makes a generous wish to bring everybody back, then Earth could be saved, but that would still mean that Universe 7 would be a lot weaker, and they wouldn't be strong enough to fight against future threats on their own. And considering the fact that Jiren's mindset in that entire tournament was to revive his fallen master, this selfish wish would mean that everybody would eventually be punished and erased by Zeno. Now this brings up a question about Dragon Ball GT. If we analyze it individually, Lazuli was originally an important character in helping Goku defeat Lapis, so in a roundabout way where all of the events were consistent, Goku would eventually lose to Lapis. In fact, in all likelihood, since Lazuli rejected Krillin and wouldn't be his wife, it's actually very possible that she would be fighting alongside Lapis directly as an android, as Lapis was originally trying to recruit her. Now it's unlikely in complete fanfiction to theorize her getting a fusion power-up becoming Super Lazuli, if you want to call her that, as compared to Super Lapis, but she and her brother would have absolutely no competition on Earth, and GT would end extremely bad, just like Dragon Ball Z ended, and just like Dragon Ball Super ended. So ultimately, if Lazuli rejected Krillin, it would drastically change the events of the World Tournament, and would have ultimately ruined Mr. Satan's reputation, who was an important character in helping defeat Buu later on. It would also remove herself and Lapis from the Tournament of Power, which ultimately means that Universe 7 would lose, and because she directly helped Goku in GT, having no connection to Krillin means that Lapis would eventually beat everybody in GT alongside her. So as crazy as it is to believe, Lazuli rejecting Krillin changes the entire scope of Dragon Ball history for all of the reasons that we just said. But before you go, make sure you check out What If Gohan Never Met Videl, which analyzes changes of the Buu Saga, What If Yamcha and Bulma Never Broke Up, which would obviously impact Trunks, and last but not least, is Lazuli the perfect Dragon Ball wife? And until next time, stay cool and stay safe, my friends.